So for today, we're jumping right into the new stuff. And the new stuff is I give you an equation, y equals x squared plus 4x plus 1. And first of all, if I asked you to get me factored form, sometimes the answer is you just can't factor it. If you look at this one, can you see pretty quickly that it'd have to be x plus and x plus, and then it would have to be a 1 and a 1? And that's not ever going to work. That's not going to make the 4x you need, right? So there is sometimes when you just can't get factored form. Okay. But you know what you can get every single time? You can always get the vertex. Now, it's not just sitting there. It's not like, oh, the vertex is 4, 1. There's only one form that it can be in that would be vertex form, okay? And you can always get the vertex, though. So if it's in this form, we have never done one where we said, tell me what the vertex is. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So to do that, I'm first off going to say, let's imagine that this number, this 1 here, could be anything we want. I can make it anything I want. If I made it just the perfect number, called a perfect square, then if I make this just the perfect number, it'll factor beautifully and it'll go right into vertex form. So let me show you that. Half of the 4 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. Notice what I did there, half n square. And that's the perfect number, and let me show you why. Because now this thing will not only factor, but it'll factor to 2 identical things, x plus 2 and x plus 2. And why is that good? Because it's not only factored form, it's vertex form. And if I put a little plus 0 at the end, it'll make it extra obvious that the vertex would be negative 2, 0. Okay, so you might be like, okay, great. If it had happened to be a 4, in fact, that's the only number that would have worked that way. So that's kind of cheating, isn't it? Like, it's only going to work one time. It's when that last number is a 4. Okay, so then here's what you do. If you have a problem that doesn't end perfectly, like, let's say 2x plus 18. I'm just trying to make it ludicrous. That is not going to factor. And that is definitely not the perfect number to have right there. What you do is you just move that number over. You say, I'll deal with you later. Now, I can't just erase an 18 out of an equation, or I would fundamentally change the equation. It's not going to be the same at all. I also can't just do that half and square number I just told you about a second ago. Half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1. I can't just go around adding 1 to my equation without doing something to balance it out. I could add 1 to both sides, but then I'd have this weird y plus 1 on the other side. So even smarter, I could just subtract 1. Now I know it seems like, well, isn't this going to cancel out? It would, except we're going to factor this and let these two guys go together. All right, so then this factors, and it factors into x plus 1 and x plus 1. And if I was smarter than I am, I would have just put those together as x plus 1 squared. And I think you'll see it's in vertex form. I now know the vertex. That was fast, wasn't it? You can do these in 30 seconds. You can change standard form or general form. They are the same thing. I get a little confused because in my online higher algebra class, they call it standard form. And here we call it general form, and they're the same thing. This thing we started with in red, all the red writing up there, that's either standard or general form. And this, it's called vertex form, and I instantly know the vertex is negative 1, 17. So you can always get the vertex. Every single parabola ever has a vertex. Okay, they don't all have x-intercepts. They don't all factor, but they all have a vertex. All right, so let's see if you learned it. And no, we're not done that quickly. There's one more thing I have to teach you, but this is the main thing for the day. Y equals x squared plus 8x minus 11, and I'm just going to save time by writing it way over there, because I know you're going to move it over there anyway. Now, do the half n square thing. That's key. This is called completing the square. And one of my favorite stories of my math career is okay, you have to know a little bit of backstory. I do tutoring for the ACT and for the PSAT, PSAT. And PSAT test, if you rock the PSAT test your junior year, you can get massive scholarships. Because the PSAT is the only test that can give you National Merit Scholar. Have you guys heard of a National Merit Scholar before? You could take like 1,200 AP tests, you won't get National Merit Scholar. Only this one test, the PSAT, can get you National Merit Scholar. And why would you want that? Just because it looks good on your college applications? Well, it does for that. But it also opens up, there's like 50 different colleges that will give you a full ride. All you have to say is, I'm a National Merit Scholar. And not just, you have to have passed this really hard test, which is the PSAT test, and at a really high level. And there's some paperwork you have to do after that. You do have to take the SAT to prove that that wasn't a fluke. But if you can get a really good score on the PSAT, you'll do fine on the SAT. They're basically the same thing. So long story short, my daughter did this. She got the PSAT National Merit Scholar thing. Top 1/2 of 1% in the nation. We typically have like 30 kids at this school who get it. And then you have 50 colleges offering you a free ride. We're talking they'll pay for your food. They'll pay for your room. You'll pay for the tuition. Funny, the only thing they wouldn't pay for is the parking pass. Everything else was paid for at the college she went to. Because of one test. It's a pretty big deal. Would you like to not have any debt? Would you like to bless your parents with, you won't have to pay for my college? That's a pretty big gift. So anyway, I had a kid come back and tell me, it was this thing you taught us. You reminded us how to do complete the square, and it was at a key moment on the test, and I know I got it right because I used complete the square on the PSAT, and he was telling me this in the context of he was getting the award at they have a big school board banquet, or not banquet, they have a day where they honor the people that got National Merit Scholar this year, and he was there and I was there, and anyway, it was this skill. I very rarely have a kid come back and say, it was that one thing you reminded us how to do that I used on the test and it worked, and I know I got it. I got that problem right, and I know I made National Merit Scholar. Okay, so half and square, half of 8 is 60, half of 8 is 4, and then 4 squared is 16. And if I do plus 16, I got to do minus 16. And then this part, factors. And you can write it all the way out, x plus 4 and x plus 4. But you're just going to put them together anyways. X plus 4 squared. And then these two together would make negative 27. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Cool. You found the vertex, didn't you? I mean, it's there. It's in the answer. Cool. So you can always find the vertex with this method. The only way it gets tricky is sometimes that middle number, like the 8 we had, we were always taking half of things that were even. It makes it really easy. What if it's like 5 and you got to do half of it? Well, you have decimals, and it's not that bad. I'll show you that. But there's another way that is also really powerful for finding the vertex, and I want to show it to you. So here's me doing the exact same problem. Y equals x squared plus 8x minus 11 in the other way. Now, I want to give you this example. Imagine that I was trying to tighten, you've heard of a nut and a bolt, right? You got a bolt that you're trying to tighten. This is the right tool. In case you're less on the video, guys, I'm holding up a crescent wrench. This is the right thing to do to tighten a bolt, or a nut and a bolt, okay? But this would kind of work. It'd just be way slower. it's not gonna you have to grab really hard. This is by the way, for the video people, this is a needle nose pliers. It could work, it's just not gonna work as good. Okay, but they could both find me the vertex. All right, my point is, I have another way to find the vertex that might be better if the middle number was a decimal. Now, I'm just going to show you, though, on this same exact problem, because we already know the answer. The answer is that. But I'll just show you how I could get it with this other way. X equals negative b over 2a. That's the tool for finding the axis of symmetry. I've never told it to you before, because I always wanted you to find it by finding in between the two x-intercepts. But this is another way to find the axis of symmetry. You know, they always start x equals, right? So what is this a and b that are in there? Do you remember the quadratic formula? X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Those are these numbers. The 1, the 8, and the negative 11 are the a and the b and the c. Okay? So if I'm saying it's negative b over 2a, then it's negative 8 over 2 times 1, which would be negative 4. And bingo, I have x equals negative 4. And I've got the axis of symmetry. And you might be thinking, but you told me you were finding the vertex. What do you think I'm going to do with the negative 4 now? I'm going to go plug it in the equation. See, it's not going to work quite as well as doing this thing called completing the square down here, but it's going to work. The negative 4 here can now go in here. Wait, sorry, in the x. Negative 4 goes there, and negative 4 goes there. And there's this weird thing that always happens. That is 16. This is negative 32. These are always opposites, and one is always double the other. And then minus 11. And now y equals all that, and now I know the rest of my vertex. So put these together, I get negative 16, and here's negative 11. Do you remember those two numbers from before? Negative 16 and the negative 11 makes negative 27. And now I know that the y is negative 27, and now I know my vertex, negative 4, comma, negative 27. And you might be thinking, I'm never going to use that tool, Mr. Server. I think you will, because when these are a decimal, these are not so fun if they're a decimal, because that would be a decimal. And then you'd have to take the square root of the decimal to put it there. It can be done, but when this middle number is odd, it's harder to do half and then square it. And then you're going to want to use this way. All right, so a reminder. Here's the key formula, negative b over 2a. Would you just use that and tell me on this equation, what is the axis of symmetry? X squared plus 7x plus 4. Because if you know the axis of symmetry, you know two things. You know the axis of symmetry, and you know the vertex. You just know it in kind of a roundabout way. You'll have to take that number and stick it in the equation. All right, so what's negative b? Negative 7. Over 2a, and in this case a is 1, which really means over 2. Could you just say that's negative 3.5? Isn't 7 over 2 equal to 3.5? Yeah. What if you don't know those so well as decimals? I have news for you. On our next test, we are going to allow you a scientific calculator. And you might be thinking, oh great, I've only got a graphing calculator. We will not let you use a graphing calculator. Why? Because you could just graph a ton of the problems on our next test, and we're going to be asking you things like, what's the vertex on this one? And you just graph it, and you'd be like, there it is. It'd be so easy. You just graph every one of them. So we can't let you use a graphing calculator. But we do have some nasty decimals on this test. We know some of you would bomb the test just because you couldn't do the decimal part. So we're going to let you have a scientific calculator. So where are you going to get that? Let me show you right now. Would you open up a app called Desmos Test Mode. How many of you have already used said app? Quite a few of you, but not all. If you haven't already got that app, you need to go find it right now in self-service, Desmos Test Mode. And if you pull up Desmos Test Mode, if you're an old pro at this, remember that Desmos Test Mode has, I think it's 3 different options. You want the one called Scientific. And then you want to say, go ahead and say Start Test. I just want to show you how that's going to work. It'll lock you in for a second, and that's okay. All right. If you've got the right one, I think it's purple. Can anybody verify that it's got the purple bar across the top? Okay, cool. So that allows the teacher to look quick and just go, okay, I can see everybody's only using the right kind of app because they get the purple bar on the top of their iPad. But one more thing. Tell me if the science teachers do this also. When you're done, don't you have to show them your iPad? And the teacher can then touch done, and then the teacher will be able to see how many minutes you were in that. So the idea is, if you are in it all hour like you're supposed to be, and you never like jump out to go cheat and use AI to get the answers, because we all know you can get the answers from AI nowadays, then we can make sure that we can let you use a calculator if we can check how long you were in there. So a typical kid's gonna walk up with their iPad when they're done and hand me their test and show me their iPad. I touch done and I see how many minutes you were in there. And if you were supposed to be in there for like 40 minutes, but you've only been in there for 20 minutes, I'm gonna know, okay, dang it, this kid must have cheated. They went out of the app, was able to go use AI to get an answer. See what I'm saying? All right, so I'll be telling everybody how to do this again on the test day. All right, so now you've got Desmos, you've got the scientific calculator up, and if you couldn't have already done this in your head, I can do that in my head. You definitely want the calculator for doing this. Negative 3.5 squared. And you guys just help me with this, because you're in test mode right now, so you can't actually leave this and write the answer down. But what is, somebody help me, what's negative 3.5 squared? 12.25, thank you. And what's 7 times negative 3.5?
-24.5.
Thank you. And then plus 4. And there. What did I just find? Remember how I said these are always one's double the other, and it's always the opposite? So then it's kind of easy. It's negative that. All right, so it's negative 12.25 plus 4. So that's negative 8.25. And now I have my vertex. That's the x, and that's the y. Okay, so you get to pick, except when you don't. On the test, there's one time where we require you to use complete the square. It's that powerful and important that you have to know, where's the way? That way where you use half and square, you gotta know that way. So there's one problem where we say you must use complete the square. But otherwise, the rest of the test, you can always use x equals negative b over 2a if you want. Sometimes they just ask you for the axis of symmetry, and then you're done. You just do x equals negative b over 2a, and you got the axis of symmetry in like 2 seconds. All right. Cool. That's it. But now I got to give you a couple. Make sure you can actually use the tools that I just taught you. So try this one. Y equals x squared minus 10x plus 1. In my opinion, complete the square is the more important one to practice right now. Because why? Because you have to use that. The other way, you don't have to use. The negative b over 2a is not required. But this way is required. So what was the last number again? Was it plus 1? I'm moving it over here. Half and squared goes there. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to show the other kid. Not because most of the time you guys have the same answer, but it's because sometimes you don't, and sometimes you don't know how to do it, and that's where I want the other kid to be able to help you. because there's 30 of you and only one of me. All right, so in a second, I'm going to ask you to show that other kid. And if you got the same answer, yay. If you don't, somebody needs help. All right? Raise your hand if you are done. That's most of it. All right, you can start asking. Let's get next to you if you're done.
Also plus 25 minus it's half a square. Yeah, but they in factor.
Big test today.
Plus
5 minus
inside. Yep.
is this.
Yes.
I'm gonna take your odds. Fine, I got 100% the last time.
All right. Half of 10 is 5. 5 squared is 25. If I plus 25, then I got a minus 25. This part can be factored. Y equals x minus 5 quantity squared. Put those together, minus 24. Raise your hand if you had that one right. That was definitely faster than x equals negative b over 2a. But I'm still going to show you quick. Here's what it would have been. X equals negative b, which is negative of negative 10, which is 10, over 2a, which is 2, which would be 5. And then I got the x of the vertex now. But now I'd have to take that 5 and go stick it back in the equation, which would be here and here. And I got 25 and negative 50. It's always that double and opposite thing. Negative 25 plus 1 is negative 24. So 5 comma negative 24. It works. It's good to have two tools, because sometimes the right tool for the job is the crescent wrench, and other times it's definitely the pliers. Okay. All right, awesome. Then, grab today's homework. I'm going to tell you which ones to skip. It's a little too long. I'm trying to be very reasonable. That way I can honestly say at conferences, if the kid's not doing the homework, I always make it reasonable size, and I always post the key. So there's no excuse why you shouldn't do your homework. It's always like reasonably sized, and this one's too long. Problems 1 and 2 are just fine. You can do those. They only take a few seconds per problem. It's factoring, which you can never go wrong with factoring. Number 3, though, starts to get a little bit too much. So we're going to cross off the whole right side. So it's 3b. And I think it's going to be the next one down. So D, yep, cross off D. And F. And 4b. Now that makes it reasonably sized. Now if you've been getting a B in this class and you wanted an A, that'd be something you could do. It would be like, you could do a few extra practice problems. Probably wouldn't hurt you. But I'm not making you. I'm just saying, if you ever wanted to do a little better in here, do more practice than other people. Don't have to, but I'd say skip those if you're doing pretty well in this class. All right, here we go. We're going to start with number 1. I always like to get started. French, would you read me number 1?
Factor each quadratic expression.
Okay.
X squared plus 16x.
16x?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
64.
Oh, plus 64. Okay, cool. Well, I bet you they're setting us up because these are going to be perfect squares. X and X, plus and plus. What multiplies 64 is probably 8 and an 8. And yeah, look at that. It's a perfect square. Do you have to put them together like this? Not at this point, but you could. You will eventually if you're going to make vertex form, but you don't have to in this case. All right, so it's a bunch of factoring problems. And then a bunch of complete the square questions. And then occasionally you might want to use that negative b over 2a thing. All right. Don't forget that. That's the only new formula of the day. X equals negative b over 2a. All right. That's all I got for you for today.